everybody, today I'm bringing you my April wrap. Notice different setting. Sorry, my boyfriend's in bed ill and, you know, didn't want to do it in the room next to it, so we're doing it downstairs today in the kitchen because why not? It wasn't a good month, and looking back at this pile of books I realised just how much it wasn't a good reading month. I think I've been in a weird headspace. I've had a bit of a personal situation, especially in the last few weeks, so reading's been not great, and that's probably more to do with my concentration than the books, so don't judge them too harshly from what I say. Firstly, I read Roald Dahl's Matilda. Strangely enough, being a child that loved books and loved the film of Matilda, I never actually read this book. I didn't read that much Roald Dahl. I remember when I was very, very young starting Charlie and the Chocolate Factory a few times. I also read The Witches and remember loving that. But Matilda was just never one that reached my to-read list for some bizarre reason. Because I watched the film so much as a child and I know the film so well, I found it quite difficult to read because I'm one of these people that finds it hard to read a book when I've either already read it or know what's going to happen. I find it a bit boring. This was enjoyable enough. I mean, it's not too short, but I mean, there's illustrations and the writing's pretty big, so I got through it in about a day. And it was fun, it was nice enough, but it's Matilda and I knew the story, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was actually surprised because in the film obviously they make a very big thing of her sort of telekinesis and everything like that, and that doesn't come into the book until very, very near to the end. It's basically, if you don't know, it's about a girl who absolutely loves books and she doesn't fit in her family at all. None of them are readers. They sort of watch television and they don't understand her strange obsession with books and they think it's unhealthy and they really try and discourage her. And her teacher tries really hard to encourage her and to get her family to encourage her and is shocked at how they treat her. The headmistress at the school is also a baddie in this who thinks children are like little bitches that need to be shut up. And it's basically about Matilda's struggle against these bad people, and she sort of teams up with her teacher, but she has sort of hidden powers that come to light during this. So yes, there was that one. Then I read Kekeke Love by Catherine Dunn. This is a book that has been on my shelf for a while and I have been so excited to read, but have been putting it off because I felt like I should read other books first. And I didn't love it, I have to say. No, I feel like if I read it at a different time in my life I would have loved it, but because my concentration's not great at the moment and I'm not finding that much time to read, it took me a long time to get through. It's quite dense. It is quite dense. I mean, the writing in it is tiny and it's a strange novel. It's basically about a carnival family who run a carnival full of like freaks. It's a circus for freaks. And the father and mother that sort of run this carnival decide that they're going to experiment with their pregnancies and try and get their children to be as geekish and strange as they possibly can. And it's quite dark, I'm not gonna lie. Like, you know, if they have a child that's not deformed enough, they just leave it somewhere. They don't want it. It's not gonna make them any money. And it follows one of their children who, she's not the strangest of them the lot, she's sort of the most normal of the lot. She's an albino with a hunchback, and she sort of is the one that stands outside to coax people inside, so she only just fits into the family, and it's written from her perspective. I think a lot of the reason that I found this difficult was because even though it's written from her perspective and she's telling us what happened, she's very much on the outside, and I know that's probably intentional because she was kind of on the outside of the family, but I felt like I needed more of her injected into the story, and it flits between modern day her and back in the past when she was younger. The problem I had with the modern day her is that she's living in a sort of boarding house that her mum owns, and her daughter is also there, and none of them know. Like, she knows, but the mum and the daughter don't know, and it's like, I'm sure the mum, I mean, I think she's meant to be a bit senile, but I'm sure the mum would recognise her albino hunchback daughter. I'm sure that that's not something that happens often. But anyway, it was good enough, and there were some really good points in this book, and I will reread it at a time when I've got time to actually concentrate on it, and, you know, I've heard great things about it, so I think it was literally just my concentration was not in the game. Then I read George Orwell's Animal Farm. My boyfriend is a huge advocate of George Orwell, and so I am slowly trying to read George Orwell's works. The only other George Orwell I have read up to now is 1984, which I didn't love, and I won't go into my reasons now. If you want to know more about my experience with Orwell, I have written a blog post about Animal Farm, and I briefly go into 1984 there as well, so I will link that down below. I mean, this is a really short book, and it was okay. I think, again, I read it in the wrong way, because I thought, oh, it's a short book, I've got a day, I'll read it in a day. And that didn't end up happening. I ended up reading half of it that day, and 2 weeks later I finished it. I enjoyed the second half a lot more, but I don't know whether that's just because of the disjointed way I read it. It's basically about a farm in which the animals overrule the human, and it's, you know, as I go into in my blog post, it's all a political statement because it's Orwell, and my boyfriend tells me it's a political statement about revolution in Russia. But, you know, I took it just for what I took it as, was the animals overruled the owner, and, you know, it was meant to be a free society and everyone was meant to be equal, and slowly it was the pigs that started trying to rule people and trying to take the position of authority and changing, because when they first overruled the human, they came up with a set of rules that they wrote down, and the pigs are slowly changing the wording of the rules, and eventually, and my favourite part of this book is eventually they scrub off all the rules and write all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And I think in the political sense, that is what I got from that, you know, it's still very relevant today, and I don't think you necessarily need to know the political history of this book to see the sort of statement it's making. So, you know, I think, because I'm often put off by the fact that it's meant to be a political statement, and I think you shouldn't be, because it's still very relevant today, and you don't necessarily need to know the history of this to get what it's saying. You know, people might not like that opinion, my boyfriend certainly didn't, but that's what I got from it. You know, it's still a political statement, but I took it to be relevant to my life today rather than to something that I don't necessarily know enough about to comment on. But anyway, then I read Ernest Hemingway's A Moveable Feast. I did not know how small this book was, and I mean, it's a mini-size book as well. That said, I really enjoyed this. It's a series of essays that Ernest Hemingway wrote on his life in Paris. It's the first Hemingway I've read, and I do intend to read more, but I'm sort of sceptical because I don't know how much I'm going to like him as a person. I know he was all into bullfighting and stuff like that, which I don't agree with, so we will see how I actually like his books, but this was enjoyable enough. It's written by a writer about his writing, and there's also a lot of sort of relevant literary figures that pop up during this as well, like Joyce, and we've got quite a big section on F. Scott Fitzgerald in here, so I would recommend this for writers, because writers love reading about writers. Bit of a cheat with this one. I finished this month, but I didn't read the whole thing. It's a short story collection, Birds of America by Laurie Moore. I have been dipping in and out of this, and I finished it this month, so I thought I'd include it in this wrap-up. I do love Laurie Moore. This is my second short story collection I've read of hers, and even though there is such amazing promise in her writing, I sometimes feel like it's a bit above my head, although most things have been above my head this month, let's be honest. But I do really enjoy her work, and one that I particularly enjoyed in here, there was one about charades, which was really funny because there was just observations that, you know, everybody does that when they're playing charades. And there was also one which I will read you an extract from, because it's just beautiful, which is called Real Estate. The only thing that put me off about this story was that it was very long. It took me about an hour to read. It's probably a good 50 pages long, if not more. So they're short stories, but they're quite long, and I do prefer a shorter, snappy short story, because I don't read short story collections as my main book. I read them on the side, so I like something that I can just pick up for half an hour and read. That's probably why I had problems with some of the stories in here and didn't sort of follow them very well. Anyway, this is the beginning of the story called Real Estate. It must be, Ruth thought, that she was going to die in the spring. She felt such inexplicable desolation then, such sludge in her heart, felt the season's mockery, all that chartreuse humidity in her throat like a gag. How else to explain such a feeling? She could almost burst. Could one burst with joylessness? What she was feeling was too strange, too contrary, too isolated for a mere emotion. It had to be premonition, one of being finally whisked away after much boring, flailing and flapping, and the pained, purposeless work that constituted life, and in spring no less, a premonition of death, a rehearsal. A secretary's called to remind her of the appointment. Of course, it had always been in the spring that she discovered her husband's affairs, but the last one was 2 years ago, and why did she care about all that now? There had been a parade of flings in the end. They'd made her laugh. That's just an example of Laurie Moore's writing and why I love her so very much. Then I read Sheltering Rain by Jojo Moyes. This is her debut novel, and I did not like it at all. I found it a real chore to get through in the end. I mean, it's pretty thick. Admittedly, the personal situation that I spoke about happened when I was reading this, which didn't help, and it wasn't really in the place where I wanted to read, but when I first started reading this, I felt as though it wasn't good, but I could see how it was her debut novel and how I probably make the same mistakes in my novel, and I know I probably still do make all the mistakes she made, but it made it quite hard reading and it wasn't that gripping. It's basically about 3 generations of a family, so you've got Joy, the grandmother, Kate, the mother, and Sabine, Kate's daughter or the granddaughter. Sabine goes and lives with Joy because Kate is going through a separation and she doesn't want Sabine around. Kate doesn't get on with Joy, they haven't spoken in years, and Sabine really fits in the end. Like, obviously at first it's not very good, they don't get on, she thinks they're stuffy and old. Then Sabine really fits in. Kate then goes to join them, and it's sort of about the dynamics between them and how she deals with the fact that her daughter gets on with her mother while she cannot. And I would like to say more, but that's about all it's about, and it's a thick book, and I mean, it went on. It went on, and I didn't love it. It was a bit dull for me. Then I read, lastly, Hammies' Last Stand by Harry Leslie Smith. I picked this up because, obviously, voting day is coming up, and I thought, why not get a bit political and try and educate myself some more. Didn't love this either, not gonna lie, but again, might be my own fault. Firstly, let's get the pettiness out the way. There was quite a lot of typos in this, and that bothered me. Yeah, that bothered me. But also, I feel like it's not long, but I feel like it could have been a lot shorter. Harry basically I think he's 91. Yes, he's 91. He lived through the war and everything, and obviously a lot of political change, and he has noticed that things are going back downhill, and sort of the welfare state and everything is sort of collapsing, and he wants to say that he doesn't want people to make the same mistakes as the people in the past did, which is a nice sort of gesture. And I think the last few pages where he summarises his views on politics are really good. Right, sorry about that, my boyfriend appeared. So yes, we were on Harry's Last Stand by Harry Leslie Smith. Yes, he outlines his political views in the last few pages of the book, but the rest of the book I felt was kind of unnecessary. It's like an extended essay of his views, and it goes over his past life and the poverty he lived in and the way that was improved, and it just went on, and I found myself really fighting towards the end of it to actually continue. I don't know whether that's also because I find non-fiction hard anyway, because I do like a fiction book that I can get completely lost into. It takes a very good non-fiction book to actually grip me. So I didn't love this one either. I'm sorry, and I'm hoping that next month is going to be a little better. I'm going to try and pick books that I'm really very excited for so that I can bring some good reviews, and hopefully get out of this non-concentrating slump that I have fallen into. Bye-bye!